All right, Max and Theo, thanks for joining me today. I know it seems like college is a long way off, but we're here in the house. We got nothing better to do because of the quarantine. So I thought we'd take a few minutes to talk about your possible options. So one option I feel very strongly about is the Electoral College. So I know college seems like a long way away. High school's still a long way away for you guys, but it's not too early to start thinking about your educational options. So just a few positive things to point out about the Electoral College. You'll note up here, we got a picture of a typical dorm room. So it's one of the few colleges that as a freshman, you can get a single. You would not have to share a room with your brother or with anybody else. Okay, sounds pretty good. Great. They also have some very famous alumni. So you got John Belushi here. His whole college career was made very famous by the documentary called Animal House. Now, it's a little too real, so I wouldn't recommend watching it for someone your age. But hey, you pay attention? Okay, make sure you pay attention, all right? But it is, it gives you great insight into what life is like as a college student. And then also, Electoral College, not a strong sports powerhouse, but they have had their moments. Okay, so here you got an image of the fans storming the court. This was 2012. I believe they were playing Loyola Marymount and Electoral College in a huge upset. With this win, they were able to get a berth in the NCAA basketball tournament. What's the berth? Means that they were able to join. They were able to play in this tournament. They kind of won the game that got them into the tournament. So we are going to go and visit the Electoral College once the quarantine is done. Okay. Now, when we go, we want to make sure we're very well prepared because they even have this fight song. So I thought we could practice the fight song so when we're there, we don't look too foolish. So you ready? Okay, now the song itself, it has the same rhythm and cadence as Take Me Out to the Ball Game. So we sing that when we go to Twins games, remember? All right. Okay, so, okay. All right. But this time you'll sing it because you don't want to seem out of place when we go to the actual college campus. So you ready? Here we go. Okay. Fight for Electoral College. Fight for electoral votes. Get to 270 and win the fight. I don't care if it's wrong or it's right, for it's win, win, winner take all. If they change their vote, it's a shame, for it's 1, 2, 3 votes for DC in the old EC. Go, go, go EC. Go, go, go EC. Go Ballhawks! Yeah! Oh, guys, I think I made a mistake. I think I was confusing Electoral College with like Carleton College, which is an actual educational institution. The Electoral College is not an educational institution. It's the institution by which we elect the President of the United States.
It is?
It is. All right, so I guess you can go back to your video game.
Adios.
All right, okay. We'll see you guys later. All right, sorry about that. Well, rather than start all over, I'll just continue and talk about the Electoral College. Going to turn off this light here. So, the Electoral College, it is the institution that elects the President of the United States. And here's kind of what happened back in 2016. So, on the Tuesday following the first Monday in November, people across the country went to their respective polling places and cast a vote for who they wanted to be president. And here was the result of the popular vote. You can see that 65.7 million votes were cast for Hillary Clinton and 62.9 million votes were cast for Donald J. Trump. Roughly just almost 3 million more votes for Hillary Clinton. And who won the election? Donald J. Trump. Why? Because the popular vote, the people do not elect the President of the United States. It is the Electoral College that elects the President of the United States. Here you see the results of the Electoral College vote. So when the electors went and cast their votes for president, there were 306 votes cast for Donald J. Trump, and there were 232 votes that were cast for Hillary Clinton. And this is the institution, this is the vote that matters. Donald J. Trump won the presidency of the United States. All right, so the Electoral College, they are actual people, and their vote happens a month after the popular vote. So on the Monday following the second Wednesday in December, seriously, that's when it actually is held. But from going forward, just remember mid-December. The Electoral College, the electors, all 538 of them, gather in their respective state capitals. And they cast two votes, one for president, one for vice president. And whoever wins that election becomes president of the United States. Okay? All right, so the basics of the system. This is what you have to understand. Okay, so each state is assigned a certain number of electoral votes. Minnesota gets 10 electoral votes, and it works like this. You add up the number of representatives you have in the House, and you add to it the number of senators that each state has. Minnesota has 8 representatives. We have 2 senators, so we get 10 electoral votes. And that happens for every state. Okay, and then it's the winner of the popular vote. So the popular vote still matters, but whoever wins the popular vote in the state, okay, you get all of that state's electoral votes. It's a winner take all system. So what you have to understand is that our election for president is not a national election. What it is it's 50 separate state elections and one district election. So if we get down to that third part there, there's 538 total electoral votes that are cast every 4 years for president. Okay. And 435 of those votes are because the House of Representatives is 435 people. Another 100 is for the 100 senators. Well, that adds up to 535. Where do we get the 3 extra votes? That's DC. So with the passage of the 23rd Amendment and its ratification, we allowed the residents of DC, the District of Columbia, to also have a voice in who becomes president. So we awarded the District of Columbia 3 electoral votes. Okay, so 538. All right, so 50 state elections plus 1 district election. There's not really a national election. And then whoever wins, you need a majority of the 538. So 270 is 50% plus 1 electoral vote. So 270 to win, you become president of the United States. Okay, those are the basics. Know your basics of the Electoral College, and you're good. There is a fifth. It's kind of a little freaky, and we'll get to that. Okay. All right. Here we have the certificate of vote for the 2016 Electoral College vote in Minnesota. And it's not a left-wing conspiracy, but you will see that all 10 electors voted for Hillary Clinton for president. All 10 electors voted for Tim Kaine for vice president. It's winner take all. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in Minnesota. Therefore, she wins all of the Electoral College votes in Minnesota. Okay, but these votes were cast in mid-December in our capital in St. Paul. Okay, so who are these electors, right? I've been teaching government for over 20 years, and I've not yet once actually cast a vote for president of the United States. I kind of like to do it, okay, but I've never been an elector. So my vote has just been a preference. It's never actually been a vote for president of the United States. Here you see some actual electors. Now, the rules around who gets to be the electors is different from state to state. Okay, but most states kind of operate with our law, or has a law similar to ours. So in Minnesota, the electors are chosen by the political parties. Okay, so prior to the popular vote in November, the Democrats select 10 possible people who will be their electors. The Republicans select a different slate of 10 people. Then when I go to the poll in November, even though it said Hillary Clinton and Donald J. Trump on the ballot, when I cast my vote, it wasn't directly for that person. What I was actually casting my vote for was which slate of 10 people would then vote on my behalf in mid-December. Okay? Now, every political party does this. Every political party does this. So if I click this link, you should be able to see this here. You'll note here you can see here is 2016. And so this was, I think it's the Republican Party. You see the list of their 10 electors and their 10 alternates in case someone got sick and had a vote in their stead. Okay. And then you have the Democratic 10 and 10. Okay. So they select 10 people who would then actually cast votes for president. But if we continue, You have all the parties. There's the Legalize Marijuana Now party and their 10 electors. Okay. If I scroll down, we might see another party. Here's the Green Party and their 10 electors and alternate electors. So they're all there. Every party selects 10. On the ballot, you see the name of the person running for president, but the general, we don't get to cast that vote. Only electors do. All right. So here was the result in Minnesota from 2016, right up at the top there. You can see that it was really close. Only 40,000 votes really separated Hillary Clinton from Donald J. Trump in Minnesota, but Hillary Clinton won Minnesota. And so these 10 people are the 10 electors that were chosen by the Democratic Party. And they all cast their vote for Hillary Clinton for president and Tim Kaine for vice president. Okay? Bam. Here was the overall result of the Electoral College vote from mid-December in 2016. Donald J. Trump, 306 electoral votes. It's more than 270, so he was elected president of the United States. Okay, wait, there's more. Oh my word, it already seems crazy, but there's more crazy stuff that's about to happen here. Okay? So here's that fifth thing. The fifth thing that was listed in the basic slide that we don't really like to talk about is by design, these electors can be free agents. They do not have to cast their vote the same way the popular vote went in their state. They are free to vote for whomever they want to, whoever they think is qualified and is going to make the best president. Okay? Now, when they do that, when they vote for someone other than the popular vote in their state indicated, we call that being a faithless elector. And now you're going to see different data on this, but my data says that there has been 167 faithless electors in United States history. So that's not that many. When you think about it, is this happening every 4 years? There's been a couple people that have decided to vote for someone other than who they were supposed to. Okay. 71 of these changed their vote just because there was a candidate for vice president that had died between November and December when the Electoral College vote. That person was no longer alive. And rather than vote for a dead person, they voted for someone who they thought might do a good job in that role. There were two people that actually abstained and chose not to vote. One was this person here, Barbara Letts Smith, or I can't quite see the last name there, but this I don't understand. Like, she's one of 538 people that was selected to actually cast a vote for president. And when the time came, she said, yeah, I don't think so, and decided not to cast a vote. At least cast the vote for someone you think is qualified. Could you do that for me? Please, come on. All right. There's 94 people that actually changed their vote because they did not like or they did not think the person they were supposed to vote for was qualified. Okay. And there were a few of those in 2016, which we will see. Okay. There are laws out there that are designed to limit a person's ability to be a faithless elector. So we have several states here. You see that. In Minnesota, we throw the vote out and we let the alternate vote instead. Okay, but the constitutionality of these laws that limit an elector's ability to vote for whomever they want to has not been ruled on. It's actually a case that's currently before the Supreme Court, so we might get a ruling on it. But this was a design that was built into the Constitution. We know the founding fathers wanted the electors to have this ability to vote for whomever they wanted to. Why? Because they didn't trust the public to do so. Okay? They just didn't think the public was wise enough to cast a vote directly for this kind of important position. All right, so here was the results from 2016. And if you look closely down here, boom, 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 you can see there were a lot of faithless electors. There were two Republican electors from Texas that cast their vote for someone other than Donald J. Trump. There was one Republican, and then there were four Democratic electors from Washington that cast their vote for someone other than Hillary Clinton. And there was another one down there in Hawaii who cast their vote for Bernie Sanders rather than casting it for Hillary Clinton. And that's all perfectly constitutional, right? All right, of course, we would never have these types of shenanigans in Minnesota because in Minnesota, we like to follow the law. Just look at all the people appropriately socially distancing from each other, right? I never see a bunch of, I don't know, say young adults gathering at parks in groups a little too close to each other. Doesn't happen in Minnesota, right? So, same thing with the Electoral College vote. This is the certificate of vote from 2004. And you can see you have your 10 Democratic electors there. Just look at them. Boom, boom, boom. There you see them all. And then you see the number of votes that were cast for president. Wait a minute. John Kerry was the Democratic candidate for president. Okay? And I only see 9 votes for John Kerry. One of these people cast a vote for John Edwards for president. Now, he happened to be running for vice president. He was the Democratic candidate for vice president. So maybe they just mixed him up. Maybe they put their vote in the wrong ballot box. I guess not. Because when I look down there at votes for vice president, I see 10 votes for John Edwards. If they just mixed them up, I would see one vote for John Kerry for vice president. No, one of these electors did not want to cast their vote for John Kerry for president. So instead, they casted it for John Edwards. Now, that's going to be very strategic thinking. Keep that in mind that in 2004, it was George W. Bush who had the most electoral votes, and then John Kerry, but John Edwards was sitting there at 1 electoral vote. Okay? One person out of 538 voted for him to be president of the United States. Sometimes we have fun when we're in class, like which one of these peoples looks like the secret faithless elector. And if you know your color coding of political parties, some people will point to the woman dressed in red and said she's a secret Republican. Most people, however, point to the line down here and they look at Frank Simon and they say, there's your rule breaker right there. Frank Simon didn't sign his name on the right line. It's got to be Frank. He's the faithless elector. All right, moving on though. So criticisms of the system. That's probably the number one criticism is that the electors can change their mind. They don't have to follow the popular vote of their state. They can vote for whomever they want to. The other common criticism is just that it's too complex, okay, that the public doesn't understand it, okay, and they never will. I don't know. I think anybody that did a 9th grade civics class can understand the Electoral College. Now, is it an institution that has a purpose in today's world when we have public education, for everybody? I'm not sure if you can argue that it's achieving the same purpose that it did back in 1789. Okay. And then the big criticism, one of the big criticism is that there can be a tie, 269 to 269. You can end up with a tie in the Electoral College vote. But the big criticism is this one, is that you can win the popular vote and still lose the Electoral College. And we saw that happen 5 times now, 2 times just in my lifetime. In 2000 and 2016, the Democratic candidate actually got more votes across the country. They won the popular vote, but they lost the Electoral College vote. And you're like, how is that possible? How is it possible that Hillary Clinton could get 3 million more votes than Donald J. Trump and still lose the election? Okay. Well, you saw how close the election was in Minnesota, right? That's kind of your answer. Okay. It doesn't pay to run up the vote in a state you know you're going to win. So like Democrats will rarely campaign in California because they know they're going to win California's 55 electoral votes. So why go and campaign there? I don't need more people to vote for me in California because I'm going to get the same number of electoral votes. All I have to do is win it. I get 55. Same for Republicans in Texas. Typically, you don't see a lot of Republicans campaigning in Texas because they know they're going to get those 38 electoral votes. Okay. Regardless of, as long as you win Texas, you get all 38. Okay. But Minnesota was up for grabs. There was only 40,000 votes separating the two. Okay. So, but because Hillary Clinton won Minnesota by 40,000 votes, she gets all 10 electoral college votes. So you explain the 2016 election like this. In the states that Hillary Clinton won, she won by a lot. In the states that that Donald Trump won, he won by a narrow margin, especially if you look at Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, states that all went for Donald J. Trump, but by a very slim margin. Yet their winner take all, so he won all of those states' electoral votes. Okay, put him over the top. Gave him more than 270, he won the presidency. Okay, all right. And so now the other criticism, what if there's a tie? Well, this is what the musical Hamilton was all about. Here is the certification of the vote from 1800. And you can see that there was a tie between Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. So that big scene in Hamilton where they go to Hamilton and they're saying, hey, Alexander, how should we vote? They're talking about the House of Representatives. Because if there's a tie, this is what happens. If there's a tie in the Electoral College vote or no one receives a majority, the election gets thrown to the House. And the House will vote by state delegation from the top 3 electoral vote receivers. So it was the House of Representatives that elected Thomas Jefferson over Aaron Burr. Okay, and that brings up again that one vote, that faithless elector from Minnesota back in 2004 might have been very strategic to vote for John Edwards, give him that one electoral vote. Because if there had been a tie, or if George W. Bush hadn't been able to achieve the 270 threshold, the election would have gone to the House. And even though John Edwards only had one electoral vote, the House could have elected him president of the United States. Okay. Now, you'll note that there's actually 2 elections, right? There's the election for president, there's the election for vice president. So if the Electoral College fails to elect a president, the election gets thrown to the House. If they fail to elect a vice president, the election goes to the Senate. Okay, and the Senate elects the vice president. Now, this could be fun. So this year, right, when we go to the polls in November, the House is going to be controlled by Democrats. The Senate's going to be controlled by Republicans. So when the Electoral College votes in December, if they can't come up with a winner, it's a Democratic House that's going to select the president, but it's going to be a Republican Senate that's going to select the vice president. You could end up with Joe Biden as president and Mike Pence as vice president. That would be kind of fun. That's when watching Saturday Night Live gets good again. Okay. All right, moving on. Bam. All right, so here was the result from 2016. You could ask yourself if there could have been a tie, yada, yada, yada. Okay, you will note that over here in the corner in Maine, this is a little something going different on. So 48 of the states use that winner-take-all system, that if you win the popular vote in that state, you get all of that state's electoral votes. There's 2 states that do it a little differently. There's Maine and there's Nebraska. Okay, so in Maine, what you have is 2 congressional districts, right? So they have 2 representatives in the House, and then they have the 2 senators. They get 4 electoral votes. But they award their electoral votes by congressional district. So there was one congressional district that went to Donald J. Trump, and he got that 1 electoral vote. But the Hillary Clinton won the other congressional district and also won the overall popular vote in Maine and so I ended up with 3 electoral votes from Maine. Okay, just a little bit different. We'll talk more about the district plan in just a second here. 2016, you could get a tie, but it wasn't that close. You go back to the election of 2000, the Bush-Gore election, very close to being a tie. That would have been fascinating. All right, so all you want to really know is why. Why did we come up with this crazy system? Again, you can thank Alexander Hamilton. It was a compromise that was made at the Constitutional Convention. You might remember that it was one of many. There was the 3/5 compromise. There was the Commerce and Slave Trade compromise. There was also a compromise made about how we're going to choose the executive. And it was the Electoral College that they landed on. There were other options presented. They did talk about a direct popular vote. They did talk about a parliamentary system where Congress itself would get to choose the president. Lots of different options. This is what they landed on, primarily because they didn't think the public had the wisdom to directly vote for such an important office. Okay. Could a single region dominate the country as a result? Maybe not so much today, but in the early history of our country, you look at the first 7 presidents, and I could be wrong on this, but I think they were all slave owning white men from the South. Okay, and that very well might have been a result of the Three-Fifths Compromise, that the South was able to dominate in early presidential electoral college victories. Okay, so fine, but why do we keep it? The number one reason we keep it is because it would require a constitutional amendment to change it. Okay, the whole system benefits small states, which we will show a nice little graphic for in a second. Okay, that their influence on who becomes president is greater than it should actually be according to the populations of their states. So if you have more influence, why would you vote to change it? Okay, it's also a reflection of federalism, and our country is based on federalism. It's the states that actually choose the president. Okay, the people of the states, not the people of the nation, you could say. It does allow for the possibility that if someone were to die from the time they were, the electoral college vote, from the popular vote to electoral college vote, is that they could choose a different candidate. Or if the candidate chosen by the people is so unsuitable, this is what the founders put it in place for, that the electors are free to choose someone more suitable. Okay? It works, it usually works, but in recent history, 2000, 2016, it hasn't matched up. The popular vote hasn't matched with the electoral college vote. Okay. Is there a better way to do it? Possibly, but again, they would all require a constitutional amendment, which means you have to have 2/3 of both the House and the Senate would have to propose it. It has to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. All right, so here's the graphic that shows small state influence. So you'll note that the size of your state is based on the influence you have in the electoral college. All of the really large states here, Wyoming, North Dakota, DC, Vermont, they're states with 3 electoral votes. So a person voting for president in North Dakota, okay, has more influence than the individual person who votes for president in California. Okay, more impact on who actually wins. All right. Now, what happens then is that if I'm running for president, it actually forces me to pay attention to the interests of these smaller rural states. You could say that's a benefit, that I'm not going to ignore the issues of North Dakotans in more of an agricultural economy. I'm going to pay attention to those issues as well. All right. So other alternatives to electoral college. You have the district plan. That's the plan that was used in Maine and Nebraska, where you get 1 vote for winning a congressional district, and you get an additional 2 if you win the popular vote of that state. Okay. Another option is the proportional plan. Okay, so basically, if you win 60% of the vote in Minnesota, you get 60% of the electoral college votes. The drawback to the proportional plan is that it's more likely then that no candidate would achieve a majority of the electoral college vote. And is it better if we end up with the House deciding who's going to be president and not the people? Okay. National bonus plan would work like this. You keep the electoral college exactly the same, but you give a bonus of a certain number of electors to whoever won the popular vote. Now, back in 2000, if we did the national bonus plan, it would have given Al Gore the presidency, and he was the person who won the popular vote. Okay, but he lost the electoral college vote to George W. Bush. The current figures that I see for the national bonus plan would not have helped Hillary Clinton. She still would have lost the electoral college vote, even with the bonus from the national bonus plan. And finally, there's the direct popular vote. Let's just let the people decide. Okay, whatever the founding fathers were afraid of when they designed this crazy system, maybe it doesn't exist anymore. Let's let the people elect the president. Okay, now here's the drawback to that. Okay, is you'll see this map here. If I'm running for president and I know that all I have to do is get the most votes, I'm not even going to be really that concerned about a state's issues. I'm going to just be concerned about those areas that have a lot of voters. So I'm going to go to Los Angeles. I'm going to go to Chicago. I'm going to go to Miami and New York City and maybe Minneapolis. I don't know, right? And that's where I'm going to campaign. And that's whose issues I'm going to probably align my interests with. What happens to rural America if we go to a direct popular vote? Okay, that would be like the criticism of that particular plan. All right, so there you go. That's kind of the deal with the Electoral College. Okay, so 500, the popular vote to the state still matters because it's a winner take all system. So when we go to the polls in November, right? When we go to the polls in November, we are indicating which slate of electors we want to then vote on our behalf in December. Okay, so the real vote for president happens in mid-December. How do you determine the state's electoral college vote? You add up the number of representatives with the number of senators. That gives you their number. There's 538 total electors. You need 270 to win. Bam. Just remember that. 270 win. All right. We'll see you folks. Have a good one. Don't get into trouble. Okay. Maybe a little bit of trouble. Trouble sometimes is okay. It's the name of my cat.